The world believed Princess Diana's fortune would vanish into the royal vault after her death. They were wrong.
In 1997, Princess Diana wrote a letter that most of the world has never read in full. In it, she asked that her jewelry eventually pass to her son's future wives. She was picturing women she would never meet, choosing to imagine their lives instead of her own ending. Nearly 3 decades later, those pieces are still appearing in public, on Catherine, on Meghan, and in a more complicated way on Camilla too, since the royal vault contains far more than just what Diana personally owned. Every time one of these jewels resurfaces, it reignites the same question. Is this simple history repeating itself, or is there something more deliberate going on? Today we're going to look at what's actually documented, the letter, the pieces, the dates, and separate that from the theories that have built up around them. If you enjoy this kind of grounded royal history, stick around and consider subscribing so you don't miss where this series goes next. Princess Diana's will divided her estate in a fairly conventional way for someone of her position, but she also left something called a letter of wishes, a supplementary, non-binding document meant to guide her executors on how to handle certain personal effects. In it, she wrote plainly that she wanted her jewelry allocated to the share held by her sons, so that their future wives might one day wear it, leaving the exact division to her executors' discretion. That single sentence has shaped royal jewelry history for almost 30 years. When William proposed to Catherine in 2010, he did so with his mother's own sapphire and diamond engagement ring, arguably the most recognized ring on the planet, and the clearest, most literal fulfillment of Diana's wish imaginable. Harry followed a similar path years later, incorporating diamonds from his mother's collection into Meghan's engagement ring. But here's the detail that often gets lost. Not everything Diana wore during her lifetime was actually hers to leave behind. A significant portion of her most famous jewelry, the lover's knot tiara, several major necklaces, some of her most photographed pieces, belonged to the crown, not to Diana personally. They were loaned to her as Princess of Wales, the same way they'd been loaned to princesses before her, and when she died, those specific pieces reverted to the royal collection rather than passing to her sons at all. That distinction matters enormously for understanding everything that's happened since. Take the lover's knot tiara, sometimes called Queen Mary's lover's knot tiara. It was originally commissioned by Queen Mary in 1913, later passed to Queen Elizabeth II, and given to Diana as a wedding gift on permanent loan in 1981. Diana wore it frequently in her early years as Princess of Wales, pairing it memorably with a striking high-collared gown for a state banquet in 1985. A look so distinctive it's still referenced in royal fashion coverage today. After her divorce from Charles, the tiara went back into the royal collection and into storage at Buckingham Palace. It wasn't seen in public again for 18 years. Then, in 2015, Catherine wore it to a diplomatic reception, the first time the piece had appeared since Diana's death. It's since become Catherine's signature tiara, worn more than a dozen times at state banquets for visiting heads of state, including appearances for the U.S., French, and Nigerian state visits in 2025 and 2026 alone. The symbolism writes itself, and royal commentators have pointed it out for years. A Duchess of Cambridge wearing a tiara connected to a woman who once held the same historic title link, reviving a piece that had effectively disappeared for nearly 2 decades. Whether Catherine's choice was meant to carry a message or was simply a natural, practical decision. Reaching for a spectacular, historically significant heirloom that happened to be sitting and used in the vault, is something only she could actually answer. Both readings are reasonable, and the honest answer is that we don't know her private reasoning. Beyond the tiara, Catherine has worn a number of other pieces connected to Diana over the years. A 3-strand pearl bracelet, diamond and pearl drop earrings that Diana wore in some of her final public appearances, and a 4-strand pearl choker originally from Queen Elizabeth's own collection that Diana had also worn at state occasions. Catherine notably chose that same choker for both the Queen's Platinum Jubilee events and later at Elizabeth and Philip's funerals, an unmistakably deliberate tribute in that specific instance, tying together 3 generations of the family in a single piece. It's worth being clear-eyed about what's actually going on here, though, because it's less mysterious than it might sound. When a working royal attends hundreds of engagements a year and has access to a shared institutional collection of jewelry, some overlap with what a predecessor wore is simply going to happen. There are only so many major tiaras and heirloom necklaces in circulation. What makes Catherine's case notable isn't that she's worn a few Diana-connected pieces. It's the frequency and prominence, choosing them specifically for the most photographed occasions of the year rather than incidentally. That's a genuinely documented pattern. Whether it reflects a conscious tribute, personal sentimentality, practical taste, or simply what's available and appropriate for the occasion is where documented fact ends and speculation begins. Now here's where the story most people tell about this gets meaningfully incomplete, and it's worth correcting because the full picture is more interesting than the simplified version. There's a well-known emerald and diamond piece topped with 3 diamond feathers, the heraldic badge of the Prince of Wales, that dates back to 1863. Originally gifted to Princess Alexandra of Denmark, Diana received it as a wedding gift from the Queen Mother in 1981 and wore it, mostly as a necklace pendant, at several high-profile events, including a widely photographed appearance in Vienna in 1986. After her death, since it was a crown heirloom rather than her personal property, it reverted to the royal collection. Camilla began wearing a refashioned version of the piece, reset as a brooch rather than a necklace pendant, starting in the mid-2000s, including at Charles's 50th anniversary reception as Prince of Wales in 2019. That drew real, well-documented public criticism, with some royal watchers calling the choice tone-deaf given the piece's history with Diana. It became sensitive enough that Buckingham Palace addressed it directly at one point, an unusual step for a family institution that rarely comments on individual jewelry choices. But here's the detail that a lot of retellings leave out entirely. Catherine has also worn that exact same brooch. She debuted it publicly in 2022 as a pendant on a chain, and again in September 2025 at a state visit reception. So the piece hasn't functioned as a dividing line between Camilla's jewelry and Diana's jewelry, honored only by Catherine. It's a crown heirloom that multiple royal women, across different eras, have worn precisely because it belongs to the shared institutional collection, not because any one of them was staking a claim against another. That fact alone should make anyone cautious about reading too much intention into any single piece's reappearance. It's worth pausing to talk about why royal jewelry coverage tends to drift so quickly from documented fact into elaborate theory, because it's a pattern worth recognizing whenever you're consuming this kind of content. Royal families genuinely do use clothing and jewelry as a form of soft communication. Queen Elizabeth II careful, deliberate use of specific brooches on specific occasions is well documented and even openly discussed by royal historians. So the underlying premise that jewelry choices in this family can carry meaning isn't unreasonable. The problem is that it's very easy to slide from "this family sometimes uses jewelry symbolically" to "every individual appearance of every piece is a coded message," which is a much bigger and much less provable claim. Once you assume intent behind everything, you can build a narrative connecting almost any set of dates, and it will feel compelling regardless of whether it's actually true. The honest position is somewhere in the middle. Some choices, like Catherine's choker at the Jubilee and at the funerals, carry an obvious, near-certain intentional tribute. Others, like a tiara being pulled out of storage for a state banquet because it's the most fitting piece available, may carry no hidden message at all. Without an actual statement from the person wearing it, there's usually no way to know for certain which category any individual appearance falls into, and content that presents every choice as equally deliberate is overstating what's actually known. Strip away the theorizing, and the real story here is still a striking one. Diana's instinct, writing a letter imagining daughters-in-law she'd never meet, wanting her jewelry to live on rather than sit behind glass, actually came true. Catherine wears her engagement ring every day. Meghan has worn pieces tied to Diana's memory throughout her time as a working royal. And a piece Diana once wore to a gala in Vienna in 1986 has now been worn, at different points, by 3 different women connected to this family across 2 generations. That continuity is the real headline, arguably more meaningful than any single theory about a supposed message hidden in a particular appearance. The vault isn't really a battlefield. It's closer to what Diana actually asked for. History being worn forward instead of locked away. The documented facts here are genuinely rich enough without embellishment. A letter of wishes, an engagement ring reborn as a daily symbol, a tiara that disappeared for nearly 2 decades before returning to prominence, and a single heirloom brooch that's quietly connected 3 different royal women across more than a century of family history. The parts that go further than that, the idea that every appearance is a calculated message, or that jewelry functions as a silent rivalry between 2 women, deserve real skepticism, not because they're impossible but because the actual public record doesn't fully support them, and in at least one major case directly complicates them. So that's the real story behind the jewelry. Less a coded rivalry, more a genuinely moving thread connecting Diana's own wishes to the women who came after her. If you found the actual history more interesting than the theories, a like helps this kind of fact-checked coverage reach more people, and subscribing means you'll catch the next deep dive. Let me know in the comments which piece's history surprised you most, and I'll see you in the next video.